The universe is a cruel, magnificent cheat. Stop believing the myth of creation. The real truth is, the cosmos didn't begin with a bang. It began with a broken promise. A colossal, instantaneous decay that we mistake for expansion. Every atom, every star, every fleeting moment of human joy is nothing more than collateral damage in a one-way trip toward absolute uniform nothingness. You were sold the narrative of structure, the lie of eternal return, the comfort of progress. Forget it. The fundamental unbending law of reality, the second law of thermodynamics, doesn't just suggest disorder increases. It confirms that chaos is the only constant, the dark engine churning existence forward. You can clean your room, you can organize your life, you can restructure a failing corporation, but you are only fighting a localized, microscopic skirmish against a cosmic certainty. It's futile. It's relentless. The universal tide is always pulling toward entropy. This isn't just physics. This is the operating manual for the simulation we're trapped in. They teach you about energy conservation, that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. A noble half-truth. What they conveniently leave out is the quality of that energy. The available energy, the stuff you can actually use to do work, to build, to maintain order, is constantly, irrevocably transforming into unusable heat, into useless noise, into dispersed light. It's the difference between a pristine, perfectly pressurized gas tank and the same gas released into the infinite vacuum of space. The total energy is the same. The useful energy? Gone. Completely wasted. That irreversible loss of quality is entropy, and it is the shadow government running the universe. Now, apply this cold, hard physics to your life, to our society. The system doesn't want you to understand entropy, because if you realize that everything is dissolving, the concept of sustained effort, the backbone of capitalism, bureaucracy, and religious faith collapses. They demand order. They enforce structure. They sell sustainable living and perpetual growth. Total fantasy. Look at any complex system, a rainforest, an empire, a human body. Maintaining that complexity requires a massive, continuous input of low entropy, highly structured energy. To build a cathedral, you must burn mountains of ordered wood and move tons of ordered stone. The waste, the heat, the pollution, that is the entropy dumped back out. The only way we create pockets of temporary order, like a city or a spreadsheet or an organized life, is by dramatically increasing disorder somewhere else. The universe doesn't care about your neat filing cabinet. It only registers the total rising sum of disorder. The machine works overtime to hide this transfer. The centralized structures, the power grids, the banking systems, the surveillance nets, they are all elaborate, high-energy filters designed to hoard the low-entropy resources, wealth, information, power, for the few, pushing the resulting high-entropy waste, poverty, frustration, environmental disaster, onto the many. It's an entropy management system for the elite. Don't pretend you haven't felt this. That nagging sensation that no matter how hard you work, you're always playing catch-up, always fighting a slow slide into chaos. That feeling isn't inadequacy. It's the cosmic background radiation of the second law grinding against your tiny temporary island of perceived order. If you value the discomfort of knowing this reality over the comfortable lie they peddle on the nightly news, if you understand that freedom begins only when you accept the inevitability of decay, you belong here, looking at the real mechanisms of the world. So we have established the grim backdrop. The cosmic decay is real, and the system leverages it. The complexity of the universe itself is merely a temporary, localized fever dream that burns brightly for a short geological period before fading into cosmic midnight. The very fabric of space-time stretches, not because of some benevolent expansion, but because it is literally disintegrating, dispersing potential energy until the average temperature of everything is absolute zero. This isn't philosophical poetry. This is where every single star, every thought you ever had, every monument humanity ever built is headed. Heat death, the great cosmic burnout. Now consider the human element, the psychological damage inflicted by fighting this truth. We are programmed from birth to believe in fixing things. Fix the economy, fix the climate, fix yourself. This fixation on restoration is a societal control mechanism. It keeps the population perpetually busy, permanently guilt-ridden, and eternally dependent on centralized solutions. The moment you truly accept the irreversibility of decay, you stop worshiping maintenance and start prioritizing impact. You stop building sandcastles against the tide and start asking what matters in the time you have before the tide takes everything. The most radical act is accepting the decay. It frees you from the tyranny of maintenance. We are told that life is about finding balance. Another lie. Balance is stasis, and stasis is death. Life is inherently unstable. It's a temporary, hyper-organized reaction against the entropic flow. It's a chemical flame, always consuming structure to delay its own inevitable dispersal. Every time a cell divides, every time you form a memory, energy is spent and total disorder increases. We are walking, talking proof that order is a debt we are constantly paying off with universal chaos. You are a debt collector and a spendthrift simultaneously. The cost of living is eternal dissolution. The universe is not a construction site, it is a demolition zone. Everything you see, everything society prides itself on building, is just a temporary pile of highly organized refuse awaiting final processing by the forces of dissolution. We celebrate technological leaps, calling them progress. But what is a skyscraper? It's a magnificent, complex, slow-motion collapse engineered to extract rent for a century before its steel fatigues, its concrete spalls, and it needs gutting. Progress, as defined by industrial man, is simply the creation of greater structural complexity that ensures the eventual decay will be far messier, far more energy intensive to manage. We invent better, faster ways to burn the stored potential energy of the past, calling it innovation. You, watching this right now, participate in the great charade every time you buy a durable product designed with built-in obsolescence. They sell you the promise of permanence. They deliver inevitable, managed rot. That is the only sustainable business model of civilization, managing the rate of ruin for profit, the sheer cognitive dissonance required to maintain the illusion that things can be permanently fixed, that the cosmos owes us a state of perpetual order, is psychologically ruinous. It manifests as the epidemic of modern anxiety. We feel this deep, generalized guilt, this exhausting sense that we haven't tried hard enough, haven't optimized enough, haven't maintained our lives flawlessly according to the societal playbook. That crushing weight, that feeling that you're always behind, that you're failing to keep up with the impossible standard of stasis, is the psychological tyranny of maintenance. You are exhausted because you are fighting physics. Stop pretending the sand won't shift beneath your feet. If that statement hits you with uncomfortable force, if you feel that truth vibrating beneath the surface noise of everyday life, then you recognize the real signal beneath the static of civilization. You value insight over comfort. If you cherish the kind of raw, uncomfortable truth that exposes hidden mechanisms, you belong here, among the few who dare to look directly into the void and take notes. Now, understand the difference between preservation and purpose. When you finally accept the cosmic countdown, you stop wasting energy polishing brass on a sinking ship. You stop focusing on maintenance, which is merely delaying the inevitable fee collection by entropy, and you shift your focus entirely to impact. This is the moment true freedom begins. The question changes from how do I make this last to what singular action, what idea, what ripple of pure information can I launch into the void that might survive the physical collapse? Because your physical house will crumble, your body will atomize, the data stored in silicon will eventually degrade under cosmic rays and quantum uncertainty. But a powerful, resonant idea, a concept that fundamentally changes the operating system of human thought, that has a much, much longer half-life than granite or steel. We confuse durability with longevity. Durability is a physical trait, always defeated by time. Longevity is an informational one. Look at the ancient philosophical texts, the mathematical equations that define reality. The parchment is dust. The data structure remains. It is still propagating across quantum screens in 2024. That is true resistance to entropy. It is the only resistance that matters. The great distraction of our age is the obsession with preserving the vessel instead of exporting the cargo. We spend trillions fighting decay on the physical plane, patching roads, restoring historical buildings, attempting to reverse the effects of aging, while neglecting the single most important task, creating informational surplus. Humanity is addicted to the illusion of the durable structure. We worship the pyramids. We should be worshiping the abstract thought that motivated the builders. That thought is still alive. The stones are dying, slowly but surely. Think about legacy. You are conditioned to believe legacy means your name carved in stone. It doesn't. Legacy is a successful virus of the mind. It's an instruction set that gets copied and executed by the next generation long after the original host is gone. This is why artists and pure thinkers terrify the establishment. They produce high-impact, low-maintenance work. They inject new, potent informational structures into the cultural bloodstream without requiring massive infrastructural debt to sustain their existence. The maintenance men, the politicians, the bureaucrats, they build monuments, ensuring perpetual debt, ensuring their own continuous relevance through the necessity of upkeep. They must be visible. The true creators vanish into the ripple, their work enduring silently. So, where does that leave you navigating this system of organized decline? It leaves you with a stark choice. You can live in denial, perpetually trying to bail water with a sieve, accepting the tyranny of maintenance, and suffering the anxiety of fighting a war you cannot win against the second law of thermodynamics. Or you can become a precision striker. You accept the physics, you acknowledge the inevitable fire, and you spend your limited energy only on creating things, ideas, concepts, structures of thought that are inherently anti-fragile, designed to gain power from the very chaos they encounter. Stop building sandcastles, build waves, ponder the sheer scale of the waste inherent in upkeep. Look at the energy grid, the roads, the healthcare system. Massive complex systems consuming colossal amounts of energy simply to stay where they are, to keep from collapsing instantly. This consumption is why you feel poor, why resources feel scarce. The cost isn't paying for improvement, the cost is paying for stasis. You are funding the universal debt collector every day. The government isn't taxing you for services, it's taxing you for the immense collective energy required to delay universal decomposition by another 24 hours. And what about happiness? We are told happiness is achieved through stability. This is why we chase jobs that promise longevity, relationships that promise consistency, and investments that promise security. But stability is the enemy of life. Life only occurs in dynamic, localized, non-equilibrium states. The happiest moments, the peak experiences, are always brief, sudden bursts of highly improbable order paid for immediately by increased disorder somewhere else. The moment you achieve balance, you have achieved the intellectual equivalent of room temperature, stasis. You are ready for the grave. True living demands volatility. It demands instability. It requires the constant, aggressive consumption of potential energy to create a temporary, magnificent flare of existence. Do not strive for balance. Balance is a myth designed to keep you quiet and easily manageable. You should strive for the highest possible intensity of existence before the decay inevitably claims your borrowed structure. This is the secret the architects of comfortable mediocrity refuse to tell you. They need you to be weak. They need your mind to be soft. They are selling you intellectual insulation, promising a life free from the abrasive friction of conflicting data. We have cultivated a debilitating fear of being wrong. We call it maintaining boundaries or protecting our peace, but it is actually the rigorous defense of delusion. We read only what affirms our pre-existing biases. It is comforting. It is fatal. Look at the sheer volume of information we consume every day. Terabytes of content, endless scrolling, data saturation beyond anything our ancestors could comprehend. But are we smarter? I sincerely doubt it. We are simply softer, paralyzed by choice, drowning in readily available truths we refuse to confront because confronting them would require the temporary, painful demolition of our current self-image. You see the same mechanism at work in the fitness world. A muscle does not grow from gentle stretching. It grows from micro tears, from stress that pushes it to failure. The body, forced to repair the damage, rebuilds the structure stronger than before. That is anti-fragility made manifest in biology. Why do we accept this reality for our biceps but reject it for our brains? Your ideology, your sense of self, your fundamental worldview, if it has never been pushed to the point of collapse, if it has never tasted the cold panic of being proven utterly wrong, then it is not a conviction. It is a fragile house of cards waiting for the first strong wind. Now consider this brutal paradox. The people who claim to value truth the most are often the ones most terrified of new information that disrupts their established narrative. They have invested too much emotional capital into their current belief structure. To admit they were wrong means writing off years of dedication, admitting the time was wasted, acknowledging the monumental hubris. This is the real friction, the psychological tax of learning. True intellectual growth demands that you be willing to kill your former self, maybe even twice a week. You must become a deliberate intellectual sadist. Force yourself to argue the position you hate most. Take the opposing side, not superficially, but with genuine rigor. Defend the views of your perceived enemy better than they defend themselves. That pain, that visceral cognitive dissonance, the breakdown of the seamless narrative you constructed, is the only strength training for your mind. That process creates conviction, the kind that survives real-world stress, not the flimsy faith born of sheltered intellectual ignorance. The cult of stability tells you to avoid pain, but avoiding pain means avoiding stimulus. It means accepting mediocrity as the baseline condition for survival. You are choosing a low, consistent flame over a bright, magnificent explosion. What are you actually conserving energy for? The end. You are banking potential energy toward a date with the inevitable heat death of your personal system. It makes no sense. The point of life is the aggressive, flamboyant spending of borrowed potential energy right now. The system offers you a safety net. But the truth about the safety net is that it is designed to catch you only if you fall a predictable, small distance. If you jump from a truly critical height, if you take a meaningful risk, if you expose yourself to career-altering failure or worldview-shattering information, the net does not save you. It rips, and you crash harder because you believed in the false promise of the soft landing. The net gives you the illusion of safety while preventing the necessary exposure to stress that would have made the fall irrelevant anyway. This dynamic explains the endemic risk aversion paralyzing modern culture. We celebrate the minor, incremental improvement while pathologically punishing the spectacular failure. But the specter of failure is precisely where anti-fragility is built. Failure is the necessary informational input that tells the system where to localize order, where to allocate strength. If you eliminate the possibility of failure, you eliminate the possibility of learning the ultimate constraints of your environment. You blind yourself. You become brittle. Stop chasing smooth sailing. Smooth sailing means the wind isn't strong enough. It means you are not truly traveling. You must recognize that the stability they advertise is nothing more than the slowest possible path toward decomposition. Embrace the volatility, seek the friction, break things on purpose, especially your own ideas. Demand that your identity gains power from the very stress that would crush the average person. The ultimate verdict is this: your life should not be an act of maintenance. It should be an act of magnificent, unsustainable, high-intensity creation, paid for by the chaos you deliberately invite. Do not just exist. Burn. This stability you worship is not yours. It belongs entirely to the system that requires you to be stationary. They don't want you accelerating unpredictably across the landscape. That makes resource allocation complex. They need routine. Routine is predictable. Predictability is management. You become legible, a perfect data point, easily categorized, easily taxed, easily controlled. They call it civic duty. I call it voluntary immobilization. They have constructed an environment, a beautiful, well-lit, softly carpeted prison, where the highest virtue is compliance and the greatest sin is energetic deviation. We are taught to manage expectations, not obliterate them. We are trained from childhood to fear the penalty for misstep more than we crave the reward for impossible success. Think about the institutional response to high-intensity living. We pathologize the very energy necessary for creation. They slapped a diagnosis on what used to be called relentless drive, on what used to be called genius. They medicate the deviation. You have an immense capacity for focus, coupled with a fundamental intolerance for soul-crushing tedium. That's not a superpower they need. That's a mental disorder called ADHD. You are too much, too fast, too loud for the smooth operation of the machine. Shut it down. Level the curve. That is the mandate of the matrix they built around us. The system cannot process jagged edges. It demands smooth, interchangeable cogs. The moment you start burning with true creative intensity, you become a statistical anomaly, a systemic error that must be corrected or quarantined. They will use the illusion of well-being to achieve this control. You must rest. You must balance. You must prioritize mental health. And while mental health is a legitimate concern when the stress is meaningless, when the stress is necessary, when it is the crucible forging your purpose, those demands become subtle psychological restraints. They want you resting so you don't discover the boundaries of your own power. Rest is required when the goal is mere survival. When the goal is monumental creation, rest is simply the necessary refueling pause between sprints, not the default state of being. Now, look at what they incentivize. Safe careers, guaranteed pensions, gradual ascension up a pre-approved hierarchy. These are the golden chains they hand you. Every rung on that ladder means you have traded a piece of sovereignty for a tiny piece of simulated security. And why do we accept this? Because the greatest, darkest lie of the Matrix is the manufactured scarcity of time and energy. They convince you that you have only enough fuel for the gentle cruise, never the explosive, magnificent liftoff. They whisper that genius is rare, that high performance is a genetic fluke, that the radical transformation of self is impossible after age 30. Lies. All of it. The reality is that you possess more latent potential energy than you could ever spend, but the mechanism for accessing it requires extreme friction, the very friction they taught you to avoid. It requires the catastrophic, humbling failure that forces a complete rewrite of your operating system. It demands that you willingly expose yourself to the judgment of peers and the scorn of the comfortable. You must become the enemy of the status quo, even if that status quo is merely the soft inertia of your own comfortable habits. This is why most people never make the leap. They are trapped not by inability, but by the relentless, suffocating fear of looking like an idiot. They prioritize maintaining a perfectly curated public identity over achieving real subterranean power. Pathetic. And here is the ultimate punchline. By avoiding the volatility required for anti-fragility, you become the most fragile thing in the room. When the inevitable macro shock hits, a pandemic, a financial crash, a technological disruption, the person who prioritized maintenance will shatter. The person who sought the smooth ride will be destroyed by the first unexpected storm. Why? Because they lack the necessary calibration derived from intentional, low-stakes destruction of their own framework. They didn't have the stress inoculation. The system despises the person who is truly anti-fragile because that person is ungovernable. If your strength comes from disorder, if you thrive when things break, how can they ever threaten you with instability? You become immune to their primary mechanism of control. You become a singularity of self-determination, an internal furnace running on the fuel of chaos. That is the true power, the magnificent escape from the controlled narrative. Break the safe choices. They are shackles dressed up as opportunities. Seek out the most difficult path, the one lined with inevitable failures, the one that guarantees that when you finally reach the other side, you will be unrecognizable to the timid creature who started the journey. You must treat your life not as a vessel to be preserved, but as a weapon to be sharpened against the tyranny of the soft lie. Your identity must not rest on what you have secured, but on what you are actively, violently becoming. Do not coast to the grave. Accelerate. Die empty. Look around you. This entire structure is built on one catastrophic trade: safety for soul. You sold your optionality for a mortgage and a steady paycheck. Terrible deal. Who structured that deal? The shepherds, who need the sheep to remain perfectly shorn and easily counted. They told you stability was a virtue, that consistency was the sign of a serious mind. Lies. Every single word is a control mechanism designed to flatten your evolutionary trajectory. You are taught to fear the edge, because if you ever found out how exhilarating the fall is, you would never again obey the gentle pressure of their fence. The Matrix is not a digital world. It is the collective agreement to be boring. It is the tyranny of the middle path, the enforced mediocrity that punishes anyone who dares to create a unique signal in the white noise of consumerism. Think about the institutions that define your life. The standardized testing, the corporate hierarchy, the retirement planning. They are all architected to make you dependent on predictability and therefore profoundly susceptible to collapse when the unpredictable arrives. They want you optimized for a world that ceased to exist 5 years ago. This is not life. It is careful custodial management of a body waiting to be buried. But here is the hidden mechanism the architects of comfort pray you never discover. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the fuel of adaptation. It is information delivered at high velocity. The only true failure is inaction, the conscious choice to remain stagnant, perfectly preserved like a museum piece, waiting for decay. When you refuse to break your own system, the world will eventually break it for you, and it will not be gentle. You must become a controlled demolition expert of your own life, seeking out the faults, collapsing the weak structures, and rebuilding stronger, faster, and uglier. This requires courage. Real courage, not the Hollywood kind. It requires the courage to sit in the awkward silence after you have admitted you were wrong, after you have blown up a year of work, after you have looked ridiculous trying something nobody understood. That moment of searing humiliation is where the true material of anti-fragility is forged. It is where you learn that the opinion of the crowd is irrelevant static. They aren't watching you, they are watching the reflection of their own fears in your movements. Ignore them. Now, for the verdict, the final instruction for escaping this gilded prison. The system demands that you be a consumer of solutions. It profits when you search for the 10 steps to wealth, the 3 secrets to happiness, the ultimate biohack. All of it is distraction. The truth is terrifyingly simple. Stop asking for the map. Start burning the bridge. You are waiting for permission to live a volatile, magnificent life. But the only permission you need is your own radical choice to become ungovernable. You must stop managing risk and start harvesting variance. Stop optimizing for comfort and start optimizing for resilience. Stop prioritizing approval and start prioritizing power. The controlled life is a slow suicide, a whisper of a tragedy played out over 8 decades. The chaotic life is a battle, yes, but it is a battle you are equipped to win because you are fighting on territory you understand. The jagged, unpredictable frontier of self-determination. Forget balance. Balance is for tightrope walkers trying not to fall into the safety net. You need velocity. You need asymmetry. You need to stack the deck so that your failures are cheap and small, tuition for the school of hard knocks, and your inevitable successes are massive, disproportionate, and permanently transformative. This isn't about being smart, it's about being structurally aggressive. It is about understanding that the safest choice is almost always the most dangerous one in the long run. Your life is not a documentary to be passively narrated. It is a sword to be violently forged in the fire of intentional difficulty. Step off the smooth pavement, choose the stones. Choose the dark path where you must rely solely on the new skin you have grown. And when you finally reach that peak, look back at the millions still scurrying inside the walls of the Matrix, chasing the illusion of security. Realize that their fear of looking like an idiot kept them small, while your willingness to look insane is precisely what made you free. You broke the fundamental rule. You refused to be counted. Go! Break things. Break yourself. Become unbreakable. The architecture of modern comfort is a magnificent lie. It is an elaborate, glittering mausoleum built not to honor life, but to bury potential. They convinced you that predictability was stability. They told you that following the well-worn map was wisdom. It was never about wisdom. It was always about control. It was about ensuring you paid your taxes, clocked your hours, and never, under any circumstances, questioned the fundamental absurdity of trading a singular, magnificent existence for the privilege of moderate, managed misery. The reality? The map itself is the poison. The system demands compliance. It requires the dilution of every sharp edge you possess. It wants you smoothed, standardized, and easily interchangeable. If you find yourself succeeding according to their metrics, the promotions, the safety, the mutual funds, then I have terrible news for you. You are winning the wrong game. You are playing on their board, following their rules, for prizes that feel hollow the moment you grasp them. That life is a cheap knockoff of the magnificent volatility you were actually designed for. The ultimate theft is not money, it is the theft of your agency, packaged neatly as responsible living. You must stop accepting the consensus reality. Stop asking how to optimize the cage. Burn the blueprint. Now you know the secret. The path to power is paved with voluntary exile. The cost of true freedom is the willingness to be misunderstood by everyone you once knew. You will be accused of recklessness. They will call your structural aggression self-sabotage. Let them. Their judgment is nothing more than the echo of their own suppressed terror, their own agonizing calculation of what they gave up for their perceived security. That security is a phantom limb. It doesn't exist. It never did. The only fortress worth building is internal, forged through exposure to the very risks the timid spend their lives trying to escape. Stop seeking validation from the sleeping masses. Validation is a weak drug, quickly metabolized. Seek power. Seek competence. Seek the undeniable, unshakable self-respect that comes only from staring the void down and choosing your own magnificent answer. The entire goal of societal conditioning is to make you mistake safety for morality. It's over now. They lied. The true moral imperative is self-sovereignty. You are not required to follow the script. You are not required to survive a life you despise. The choice is terrifyingly simple, nakedly brutal. Will you die the slow, polite death of the governed, optimized only for consumption and comfort? Or will you choose the volatile, magnificent war of creation? You must become ungovernable. You must refuse to be counted. The time for deliberation is long past. There is only one choice